Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining our Elevate Youth California Alchemer Overview webinar. I know folks have been eager to learn and see the new platform where progress reporting will be submitted, and so we're cover that today. As a reminder, this webinar is recorded and it will be shared with you after this call, very likely next week. Next slide. Go ahead and do some introductions. Not with us today is Matt Cervantes, the Associate Vice President of the Center at Sierra Health Foundation. My name is Bulvinder Gaur. I serve as a Senior Program Officer, and our team manages the day-to-day lead for Elevate Youth California. And with that, I'll pass it over to Shira.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shira Murray. I'm a program officer with the Elevate Youth California team. So great to see so many of you on today. I'll go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Travis.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Travis Wells, Senior Program Associate at the Center and the EYC team. Happy to see y'all today, and I can pass it over to Antonia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Antonia Gonzalez. Pronouns are they, them. I am the Program Associate here with EYC, and I will pass it over to Gerald.
Good morning, everybody. Gerald White here, Program Associate with Elevate Youth California. So happy you're here to learn about the Alchemer platform, and I'm going to pass it to Evelyn.
And our newest colleague, Evelyn, will be, I think she's on, but folks probably are looking at a familiar or a new face on the slide deck, but we're really happy to share that we have completed out our team again. And so Evelyn Gonzalez has joined us. Actually, this is her second week. And she might be having some tech issues. Okay, I think Evelyn's audio is off. Evelyn, are you back on?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much for your patience. My name is Evelyn Gonzalez. I am the new program assistant for Elevate Youth.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. And with that, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide and do some introductions for our evaluation team. Brenna, I'll pass it over to you if you wanted to cover all these.
Or I'll pass it to Noemi to introduce herself and Reese as well.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Noemi Avalos, Senior Evaluation Officer, and with us is now our Managing Director of Evaluation and Learning, Marie Samuels. We work with Brianna, who is going to introduce herself in a moment. We provide support to the program team with reporting and also manage the external evaluation contract of this program. Brianna, I'll pass it to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brianna Mattis, and I'm an evaluation associate here at Sierra Health Foundation and the Center. Back to Bulvinder.
Thank you. And yes, I'll add a little bit to what Noemi shared. These are the folks on a part of our internal evaluation team who really support us in ensuring that we're able to make sure that we support our partners in the best way possible around progress reporting, all things evaluation. And so just really appreciate our evaluation team and the huge lift in revamping the progress report template, as well as selecting a platform, and that will be Alchemer. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. And, just a reminder, Elevate Youth California is a project of the Center. It is funded through the California Cannabis Tax Fund Allocation 3, Youth Education, Prevention, Early Intervention, and Treatment account through a contract with the Department of Healthcare Services. Next slide. And on today's call, we'll go over some brief slides around just reminders around progress reporting, overview of the template. But we're really going to be spending the majority of the time. Brianna will be covering, walking through the Alchemer platform, which is the reporting platform that we use. We'll have an opportunity for questions and answers, and we'll be able to, you're more than welcome to utilize the Q&A chat. There's a lot of folks on. I think we've got, 285 plus folks that are on, and the numbers are increasing as we go. So this is a session for all of our funded partners. So I want to make sure that questions aren't lost in the chat. So do encourage you to use the Q&A box for questions that are coming through. With that, we'll go to the next slide. So really grounding ourselves in the purpose, I always like to start off with the why to ensure, and I know you've probably heard this many times, but really allows us to be able to monitor progress, both from the center's end, the Department of Healthcare Services end, as well as for your own monitoring progress. You know, many of our partners have shared that these grants, that the Elevate Youth California is probably one of their longer programs and grants that they have. And so wanting to make sure that, you know, you're being able to monitor those progress towards the goals that you've identified, and really being able to see what areas that you can identify as successes, as well as the second piece about identifying challenges and areas of support. And so on our end, we're really looking to be able to provide that support. As many of you know, our team does provide pretty robust technical assistance and training through topic-specific webinars, through networking sessions that are geared on topics that have been determined, whether it's been challenges or comments made through reporting or by partners reaching out to us. And really overall, you know, being able to have the progress reporting allows us to demonstrate the overall impact, the reach, the outcomes that our Elevate Youth California partners and programming is able to make. And so when we think about, you know, the disproportionate impact that the communities or the disproportionate impact that the war on drugs has had on communities of color, 2S LGBTQ plus communities, tribal and Native communities, we want to make sure that we're also reaching those communities, and who better to do it than those organizations who have lived experiences, who come from those communities and continue to serve those communities. And so, you know, this is a very large prevention program, youth substance use prevention program, and, you know, wanting to make sure that we're able to demonstrate the incredible reach that our program is having. And that is all because of funded partners like you, who, again, you know, come from the lived experiences, come from these communities, and are very different than what prevention typically has looked like. And so, you know, we want to make sure that we're able to share those outcomes, to be able to highlight that, and to continue to ensure that this investment, that this funding is investing in communities and community organizations that have incredible leaders like you. So, you know, just a little bit of grounding in terms of the purpose of the progress report. You know, folks might be like, well, you know, here's another deliverable that we have to do and takes time away from our work that we're doing. I will also acknowledge that some of our partners have shared how this has allowed them to build their own capacity to be able to share more of the work that they've done. You know, where they haven't been able, may have not previously quantified the number of young people they reach, the number of activities or events or programming that they've had. And we've heard some great successes in being able to report on that as well, to be able to increase funding, be able to speak to the work that you're doing, to be able to build various sort of components around evaluation internally. And we're really excited for that. We'll go to the next slide, and I'll cover sort of the format of the progress report. This isn't new. You know, I just want to highlight that this isn't new. We've covered this previously, but I wanted to do a high-level overview before we jumped into the Alchemer platform. So again, there are 8 distinct sections. As a reminder, we do really encourage that you complete, and you'll hear this multiple times throughout the webinar. You'll hear it on every email that goes out to you. We cannot emphasize enough the need to be able to complete your progress report outside of the Alchemer platform. The questions are long, you know, there's a number of questions, you know, and it will require you to work collaboratively across your organization, across different staff members, and wanting to make sure that you have that information in one spot. We have some great features that Brianna will share, but again, it's really important to be able to draft those responses outside, so that way you have all of the responses that you need for when you're submitting. But the progress report is laid out into these 8 distinct sections, which we've covered previously as we walked through the new template. So I'm not going to go into them too much, but we will note that the same report will be used for your final and cumulative report. So at the end of your award, the last progress report that your organization completes would be the progress report and cumulative report, and there would be a question that would essentially trigger those additional responses. So we will provide that as your organization does near the end of the program. So for some of you, that will be at the end of this year, and for others, it'll be next year. And for our newest slate of round 5 partners, it will be at the end of 2026. I'm having to remember what year it is. So, you know, over the next few years annually, as your program or your award closes out, you will have that cumulative section. We'll go to the next slide. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brianna, who will cover the Alchemer overview and walk us through some important notes as well.
Thanks, Paulvinder. And just wanted to note that as I think there was a question in the chat, just noting that we are asking you all to kind of collaborate before kind of going into the actual Alchemer platform to begin filling out this report. So I think that was the note that was in the chat. But so I'm sharing my screen now. I want to double check that everyone can see it. Perfect. So this is what you will see when you get the link to the report. This is Alchemer. This is our new reporting platform. And I want to highlight a few things on this first page. So on this first page, or actually before we get into it, I wanted to highlight the Word template that we will be sharing. If we haven't already shared it previously, we'll be sharing it with all partners for this collaboration to complete this progress report. Like we mentioned, there's 8 distinct sections, and if you're completing your cumulative report, that will be an additional section. So there are, you know, a lot of questions spanning a lot of different aspects of your program. So we're asking for that collaboration kind of ahead of time, that thought ahead of time to input into this form. So on this first page, this is the welcome page. We have all of the information that was kind of shared in that slides, just an overview of the EYC program and what this report covers. So those 8 sections that we'll be walking through today. And also just wanted to note, if you have questions about the report, about questions on the reporting, you can contact the EYC email before submitting to kind of get those clarifying questions. So moving into the actual report. This is the first page. So section 1 is where you'll enter information about your program. So you'll indicate which EYC track you're on, whether it's standard, capacity building, or innovation. And then there's a drop down. It is pretty long. There's a lot of partners, but it is alphabetized. So you'll just select your organization, and I'll be walking through an example just so that we can see all of the report pages. So I'll just be walking through and selecting some options here. Next, you'll select reporting period, depending on which report you're completing. And then the next question, and another thing that I want to just pause and highlight to say is that because we have gone through kind of the content of these questions in previous reports, this will really be about the functionality of Alchemer, how to actually go in and submit your information rather than the content of the question. So if you do have kind of content questions, be sure to drop it in the Q&A or send it in an email. So this is the partnerships question where you'll enter for new active partners. You'll indicate their sector. So let's say this is a school, and then you will indicate their project role. So let's say it's a school that refers youth to your program. And if you have more than one new active partner in one reporting period, then you'll just select this page or this button. And that's where you will enter additional ones. So let's say you also had a media partner. And if you press it on accident, you could also select remove here. On this page, I also want to highlight a feature that we have at the top right-hand corner, and it's the save and continue later option. So if you select this, you'll be able to enter your email and then verify it. So enter it again, and you'll get a link straight back to this progress report where your progress was, and you'll be able to continue completing it. This is a new function that we've added for you to kind of be able to submit everything kind of comprehensively once that is submitted. There is also want to highlight a low vision mode. So any just kind of for more accessibility, if you would like to view the report in this way, it does kind of make the questions bolder and larger and a bit easier to read. So moving on to the next page. And I do want to add Noemi team, if there's anything as I'm going through you'd like to add on for the different pages, just feel free to unmute and add it on. So the next page we'll be discussing is the participants or the core programming. So starting with the new participant demographics, we have pages that cover all of the new participants, and then we have pages that cover all of the completed participants. So on this first page is where we'll kind of get an overall view of your core programming. Once again, we have the definitions of core programming. So those youth who receive multiple continuous services or contact and are engaged in those three kind of large EYC activities: youth civic engagement, mentorship, or peer-to-peer support and leadership. So this question, number 5, is where you'll indicate your total number of unduplicated or unique new participants. And for this example, we'll say that you have 5 new participants. And then you'll indicate your total number engaged, and let's say that is 10. Let's say you have some programming that is that has began, prior to this recording period. So you have 10 youth who are currently engaged. The next question is where you would describe your project's measurable milestones that would define a successful completion. So for this example, we will say that youth attend 7 out of 10 sessions in the school year. Obviously, there would be more detail in that and what that looks like for you if there is some sort of tasks that they complete or goals that they complete, or if you're hoping for a certain score on like a post survey. Any of those things would be included in this question. The next question is where you would discuss the successfully completed youth, and this will be the number that will connect to the completed participant section. So for this, let's say that you had 3 youth who successfully completed your EYC programming this reporting period. Moving on to the next page, this is where you'll go into depth on those demographics and you'll kind of describe more about those new participants. So for the age, you would just indicate their age. A few things that I want to note on the platform. We do have question for total from question 6. So the number that you entered for your new participants will be indicated here in red, and then you'll enter it into these fields. So let's say you enter not all of the participant information. Let's say that you had 3 youth. Something that we've added is that if you try to select this, it will pop up as an error. So we want complete data, and if there is any unknowns, we do have a place for that. So individuals for whom you do not have self-reported data. So let's say you enter a number that is too high, and you mentioned that you have 8 youth. Once again, it will appear as an error. Total is greater than the allowed max of 5. So want to make sure that for each of these demographic pages, the correct the total aligns with the new participants total. So we will select 5, and this is another area for you to see 5 out of 5, and that will appear for these questions as well. And then you'll be able to advance to the next question. And so the next question is the same situation where your total from question 6, your total of new participants will appear here in red, and you'll be able to indicate their gender identity, say there was for this example. And this could be, you know, depending on your kind of the way in which you collect participant information, whether it's from a sign-in sheet or a pre-survey or some sort of just check-in kind of information, is where you can be gathering this demographic information. And I will also mention we do have the optional data tracker if you do not have a system in place to kind of collect and store participant information, as well as all of the information that is needed for this progress report. We have created and shared that resource, so that is something that you could also utilize. Moving on to the race ethnicity, or actually I'm wondering, maybe I'll take a quick pause here for jumping into the race ethnicity demographic questions.
I'm just looking at the questions, Brianna. I want to be mindful of questions around clarifications, which we'll cover later. I think there's just one question around character minimums for the reporting that could be answered right now.
Character minimums for like the minimum amount that could be entered for certain questions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so we are hoping for, I think, descriptive but succinct responses, and I'm not sure, I guess, for specific questions. I think you could follow up with Paul Vinder or with the EYC team as a whole for kind of what an appropriate response would be. But yeah, for the different questions, we are hoping for information, since this is where we gather and know more about your program, but we are not hoping for, you know, essays in each open-ended question. Yes.
Yep, perfect. And then you know what, Brianna, we'll go ahead and continue through making our way through. There's very specific questions, and a lot of them are very similar. And so what I think is great if we go through all of it, and then we'll come back to the questions that folks have for each of the sections.
Okay, sounds good. So next we'll talk about the race ethnicity section, and just kind of going through it as this new participants example. And we have updated this section for you all to be able to collect race ethnicity information and kind of share it in the way that works best for you. So just wanting to note what we have written here, that your organization may collect information on race ethnicity using different categories. We encourage you to apply them to these categories as well as you can, and use the subsequent question, which is actually at the end of the demographic questions, to be able to share more about how your participants identify. And if the information is available and you have youth who are multiracial or multi-ethnic, you can indicate them in multiple kind of cells on this page. But if that information is not available, we do also have individuals reporting 2 or more races and ethnicities that you can indicate them on. And on this page, if there are no new participants in a demographic category, you will need to go in and just include a 0, which is not the case for kind of the other questions. So that's another thing to note. So let's go through these pages, and we will be continuing with our example of 5 youth. And let's say that one is an Asian youth, and one is mixed race. So we had 5 people. So, and then we will go in and add zeros. So here at the bottom is where we have individuals reporting 2 or more races and ethnicities. We also have individuals reporting another race, ethnicity, or origin that's not on this list, which is something that you can share in that open-ended response cell to let us know more about that. and then individuals who prefer not to provide this information, as well as individuals for whom you do not have the self-reported data. We also have a cell here if you, if any of the new youth participants are a member of a tribal nation, you can indicate the names of the tribes in this cell as well. So let's add in the zeros for this example. And we did not indicate any tribal youth, so go to the next page. So on the previous page, I indicated that one of our youth identifies as Asian. So we do have a question for Asian subcategories, and you'll be able to indicate what ethnic group that one youth belongs to. And this is in the same setup where if you'll need to enter the same amount. So let's say that we entered incorrect amount, you will get an error. So let's say that one youth is a Chinese youth, then we'll be able to go to the next page. And we didn't indicate that any of the youth identified as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. So you will just be pressing next to continue the survey. The next question is 2S LGBTQ+ status. And for this one is the same, where we are hoping that you will indicate all of them. And I will be going through these a bit quicker just to, because it is the same situation. Next, we have the question for housing insecurity, where you'll indicate if any of your new participants are experiencing housing insecurity. Once again, just using example information so that we can advance through the progress report. The next question is foster care. For any participants in foster care, you'll indicate that here. And finally, system impacted. So if they have been impacted by the criminal or criminal justice system, you would indicate that. Okay, so those are all of the pages for the new participants, and we would go through and do the same process for the completed participants. So on question 9, I indicated that there were 3 youth who completed like this, my EYC program this reporting period. So 3 is the number that we'll be using to go through the progress report here. So I will just be kind of advancing these slides pretty quick so that we can continue with the other question types. Once again, this is the same process throughout. So once again, on the race ethnicity page, excuse me, we will be entering zeros in these cells if we do not have information. Let's see, we can. I will actually just, in the case that one of the cells is left blank, want to share this kind of error message so you'll know which cell to go back to complete, correct any fields and submit again. And when you press this, it will kind of link you to the question that will need attention to fix in order to advance the slide. Just wanted to share that. In the case that you have no one in the, no youth to report in the Asian or Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander subcategories, you'll just be pressing next on these pages. And we'll advance through these pages as well. Okay, and then on 47, this is the kind of end of the core youth demographic, core participant demographic section. So this is where you'll be able to provide any additional information, demographic information from either the new youth or the completed youth about how your participants identify. If you wanted to provide more information on the tribal youth, if you entered youth who are or individuals who identify as a race, ethnicity, or origin that's not on the list, you would include all of that information here. Great. So next we'll be jumping into the core programming and then the youth empowerment activities section. So this is where we'll be entering. So depending on what youth empowerment activities your organization works in, you will select here, and then there will be a drop down with the specific questions that you'll be asked regarding that activity. So say you engage in peer-led support and peer-led programming, enter the number of youth who engaged in that activity, the number of activities that were conducted related to peer-led support or peer-led programming, and then some more information on what those activities were, what that looked like. So let's say that of your 5 youth, 4 were engaged in this, and you had 10 activities, and the activities were A, B, and C. Yeah, this will be the opportunity to share more information on that. And just wanted to note, I'll go back on this page, that in the case that you are engaged in other activities, those core programming activities, those would appear, and you'll have those questions to respond to. Next, we'll be asking about your singular programming. So you'll indicate, just as a reminder, singular programming are services or activities that are singular, like one-time fairs or outreach events with an educational or engagement component, or other type of activities or services with limited contact, where enrollment information is typically not available and there's no expectation of additional contact. That's what we are defining singular programming as. On this page, you'll be indicating the total number of youth or adults who are engaged in any singular programming. And this can be a duplicated number of individuals who attended activities or events. And adults, as we have youth or adults, adults may include parents, guardians, or community members. So let's say you had 60 youth or adults engaged in singular programming, and you had 3 events. In this space, you could let us know what those events were. Say it was a to school drive or something like that. You could indicate that and share more information on those activities in this section. The next page, or the next section, is progress towards goals. So this is where you will indicate your project goals and related objectives from your work plan. So this is another opportunity to really utilize the Word template to have that information in one place to be able to go back to and pull from your work plan. And in the case that you've adapted your work plan, project goals, or objectives in any ways, please let the EYC team know about that. So here you will indicate your project goal and objectives. The next question is a cell for you to let us know about overall progress towards your project goals and objectives. So it indicates that here. The next section is on your policy goal. And once again, this is going to be taken straight from your work plan. So you'll indicate that here. And then with these, you'll scroll over to see the level of the policy goal, whether this is a district policy, city, county, or state. So say you're working on a district level goal regarding the coordination and engagement of stakeholders. And the next question is youth participants were the kind of in the selection process of this policy goal. So you can indicate that here. And then the next question, this is number 58, is where you'll enter the overall progress towards the achievement of your policy goal that's been made this reporting period. And once again, we recognize that policy goal and systems change happens. It takes years. So, this is just letting us know about the progress towards that goal. The next section would be successes and challenges. This really helps us to kind of know kind of more about how your work has been going. So you'll describe your top 1 to 2 successes during the reporting period, whether that's with program delivery, program operations, something that happened with the youth, you'll indicate that here, as well as challenges. So the main challenges that affected kind of those same things, whether it's operations, program delivery, challenges with youth or engaging them. That's information you can share in this section. Next page will be asking about your listening sessions. So the youth listening sessions are a separate requirement from your core programming activity. So this is where you'll indicate any information regarding your youth listening sessions. So you'll indicate if you did conduct a youth listening session this reporting period, and at least 1 youth listening session is required each grant year. So in the case that you did conduct a listening session this reporting period, you'll indicate the number of listening sessions. Only 1 is required, but in the case, let's say you conducted 2, then you could share that here, and you could let us know the total number of youth that attended. Let's say it was 8. And then we also have a cell for you to indicate you to share any highlights or the kind of the main things that you heard from those listening sessions. Say they were, identifying a problem in their community that they're hoping to address, and as it relates to your program, you could indicate that here. In the case that you didn't conduct a youth listening session and you indicate no, you would let us know the reason for that. And the reason may be, it is scheduled for the month after the report is due or something like that. So you would just indicate that here. Okay, and then the next page will be cultural lens and additional information. So this section will give us some information on how you've incorporated culturally responsive, linguistically appropriate, and healing-centered approaches in your EYC programming. So you'll indicate the ways that those approaches were utilized in your programming, and if you have any new relevant new organizational policies or practices that you've added this reporting period, you would indicate this here. And then in the case that staff received training during this reporting period on culturally responsive practices, you would indicate the number of staff who received that training. So say you onboarded 1 new staff member and they received that training, you would indicate that here. And then we have a space for you to share any other comments or highlights, media coverage. So we have a link to the Memory Fox portal, which I think you're all familiar with, in order to share photos and videos with us. But if you have any kind of media links you would also like to share here, or if there's any suggestions or your experience as you're working through this progress report, you could share that here with us as well. And then this is the cumulative report section, and it will once again only appear when you're filling out your final report. So we have 1 question on the, once again, those cultural lens, so culturally responsive, linguistically appropriate, and healing-centered care, and pretty much how your EYC project incorporated those. So I'm just going to kind of speed run through these, but you will, of course, indicate them as they relate. And then the next question would be just to provide any additional information on how your program incorporated these kind of cultural lens aspects kind of from this question above and the questions on the previous page. Let us know what approaches worked best and what was challenging. You could let us know in this question. Next, we'll be asking about your program model and the services that you provided. So this is where you could indicate kind of the main kind of up to 5 types of services or supports that the youth in your program received, either internally or through referrals. So let's say it was these 4. And in the case that it's not included here, be able to select this and write it in. The next question, we're asking about the length of time that youth and young adults are participating in your programming. And we have this as an option where you can include additional responses in the case that you have, a few different parts or components to your EYC funding at your programming, at your organization. So actually, we'll say this is program 1. Say this is something that, usually spanned about a school year. So you could say 6 months to 1 year. And then in the case that you had more than one kind of component to your EYC program, you can select add another EYC funded program here. Next, you'll be able to, once again, just provide some more additional description on what that looked like, what the engagement for your program looked like. So say it was, a weekly session where you, with a large group, and then you also had one-on-one components, or whatever that looked like, you'll be able to share that in this space. The next question is asking about lessons learned, as you reflect on this funding at the end of it, kind of what key lessons did you learn during the implementation? We'll also be asking about your future plans. So this is in the future for all of you, maybe very much so in the future, but do you plan to sustain your EYC program work? And then you would indicate yes or no. If you indicate yes, we'll be asking about your existing or expected funding sources that will be used to sustain the program work. And if no, we'll just be asking for you to share why not, just some more information on that. Next question, asking on, has the EYC grant helped build your organizational capacity, if any, and in what ways? You can share information on that. And then we'll be asking about your level of satisfaction with different technical assistance provided by our team. So whether it's the networking sessions or technical assistance by external providers, the office hours, kind of individual meetings, we'll all you'll be able to share information on that. And then if you have any kind of feedback you'd like to share, we have a space for that, which we do take into consideration and, is one of the ways that we have shaped and updated this progress report. Then once again, that space for you to share your highlights, media links, things like that you'd like to share. So we are wrapping up now. And want to highlight this page. This is where you can review everything that was submitted. So this page, just take a look back, be sure that everything was selected, that you selected the right reporting period and your correct organization name and track that you're in, and just kind of do a scan of everything that was entered, make sure it all looks correct. And it will go through everything that was submitted. I'll just scroll quickly to the bottom of this page, and something that I want to highlight is that at the bottom of this page, there is a download PDF version. So we're asking that after you kind of complete and review, everything looks correct, please download the PDF version of your report and save it for your records so that you'll be able to hold on to that and remember this was everything that I submitted on this date for this, my report for the, my June 17th submission of our progress report. And it will, open as a download on your computer, and then you'll be able to submit the report and it is completed. So that was the full walkthrough of the portal. So I will pause there for questions.
Perfect. And actually, we'll go through some of the questions. Actually, let's go through the slides. Let's close out the slides, Brenna, if you don't mind sharing really quickly, because then I'll have you just drive the, we'll go through the important notes, and then we'll come back to the reporting tool to answer the questions that were asked. That's okay. And for folks who've asked questions, I know we've been answering them in the chat. We will answer all of the questions on live as well, just to make sure that folks who are listening to the recording are able to get those responses as well. And I think Brenna's just getting the PowerPoint slides back up. Okay, perfect. And okay, perfect. So we'll just give her a moment. I'm going to quickly just answer some brief questions that are that have been asked a few times. I did want to note that the reporting period for this for all funded partners is going to be from, or will be from November 16th, 2023 to May 15th, 2024. So just a reminder that the reporting period does cover that. That's noted on both the Word document as well as the Alchemer link itself. We do have a handful of questions that we'll get to. Brenna, are you having difficulties? Because if not, Gerald, if you want to just share the slide deck, that'd be great. That might get us there. Perfect. Okay, so I'll pass it to Brianna to cover some important notes, and then I'll walk through some of the questions that we have.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Gerald. So just a few notes. I did mention them in the walkthrough, but want to highlight them and just have them here for your reference. So utilize the Word document that we'll be sharing out with all of the resources from today to collaborate kind of beforehand, before going into the platform to submit your progress report, as well as to kind of keep those questions or that information that is going to be the same every reporting period. So things like your measurable milestones for completion, what that looks like for your program, you just kind of store that within that Word document, as well as your policy goals and objectives, that information from your work plan that is not changing from quarter to quarter or kind of period to period. Next, I want to highlight once again the save and continue option that you could utilize as needed. Say you have made it through, the participants, but you wanted to, kind of go back to the singular reporting section and onwards at a kind of a later date, you'd utilize that save and continue option, and then it will send an email to you to kind of as a reminder to go back and continue. Please remember to submit the report, of course. And we ask that you only submit the report once. So say I would recommend kind of designating one person after the team has collaborated on that Word document, designate one person who's actually going in, inputting everything and actually submitting and downloading the PDF version. Another thing to note is depending on, what your program looks like, depending on if you did have listening sessions or you didn't, or the types of core programming activities or you didn't, or that you participate in, the questions on the form may not match the template that we provide. So as well as, of course, if you are, I went through a standard track example, but if you are in the capacity building track, your questions will be, of course, a little bit different, tailored to the capacity building goals, and you would not have the policy goal questions. So something to highlight, and that is noted on the template as well, kind of which questions are specific, and it will indicate like for standard track, things like that. Next slide. So I did mention this, but just want to highlight that specifically for things like the demographics, for race ethnicity, you will need to enter zeros or you will get that error and won't be able to go to the next page. So be sure to enter zeros, or if you have unknown information, to include that so that you can advance the report, of course. And yes, at the bottom of the review page, says download PDF version. Be sure to always download that PDF version and to keep it for your files, for your records.
Thank you. Next slide. So I'll cover some upcoming timeline. So as a reminder, we do have office hours for every report that is due. So the team does try to support our funded partners through office hour sessions that are held for about an hour. This time around, we are offering 3 separate sessions on June 6th, June 11th, and June 13th. The email that we've sent out previously has included the link. I'm sure my colleagues will go ahead and drop in the chat the links for the sessions as well. So that way folks can also see them. We'll also be sending out the a follow-up to this recording, or for a follow-up to this session. We'll send out the template again. We'll go ahead and send out the timeline, the due dates, all of that, the information about the office hours, how to sign up for them, and we'll also put in the data tracker tool, as well as I mentioned the Word document, as well as the link to the recording of this slide as well, or this webinar as well. So again, just a friendly reminder, this current reporting period is from November 16th to May 15th. We've dropped in the chat, we've answered it on Q&A as well, and the report is due Monday, June 17th. If your organization needs an extension for this progress report or for any deliverables for the Elevate Youth California program, it is important that you request those extensions prior to the due date. We have clarified this over email. We're sharing it again now. All extensions must be requested prior to the due date. If you have any questions, if you have not received the previous emails, we're asking, and we've dropped in the chat as well as in the Q&A, our email address for Elevate Youth California. Please include your program lead. Please include your organization name or contract number, as well as your email address that should be included. We have sent out numerous communications over the last few weeks, and probably how you got notified about this session itself. It's been listed in our emails, and that's how the templates have been sent out. So again, if you have not received that template, we do ask that you email, and we want to make sure that you are included on our listserv, so we are not missing you on that. So if you dropped in your email in the chat, again, we ask that you send it over email. I'm going to pause there, and then we'll take a question from Naomi, and then we'll pass to Naomi, and then we'll go through many of the questions that have been asked over chat and Q&A as well.
Thank you, Palvender. I just wanted to clarify because one of the questions was if this report in Alchemer replaces a cell template. So that cell template itself is replacing that cell report, like submitting through that cell. However, there is the optional Excel tracker that you can still continue, and we encourage you to use if that is useful to you to collect the data. Again, submission is changing from that cell template to Alchemer, but you can still use the optional data tracker to collect the data. And another thing that I wanted to mention, that as Palvender and Brianna mentioned, we'll be sharing the revised Word template where you can collaborate. Some of you have received this template before, but we recommend that you use the new one that you're gonna get, since we align it better to the questions in the platform. And so by the time that you submit the report, it's gonna be easier if you are working on the revised updated template. And we'll also be sharing the link to the previous recordings that do cover the content on the report, so that you have that for reference. And there was a question about who should be completing the report. This may vary by organization. We do recommend that you identify one person who submits the reports. And again, some organizations find useful when you have like 2 people, like one backup person, because there are instances where a person may leave the organization, for example, and so it's always good to have two people trained on how to submit a report, by having one person who actually submits a report, so that we don't end up with duplicated or more than one response per organization. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Palvinder. Thank you.
Thanks, Noemi. And so I'm going to you probably have heard this a few times. There are 3 different resources or 3 different things that Noemi has mentioned, we've mentioned over the chat, and that we've provided. There is an optional data tracker tool that has been shared in the chat. That is an Excel file of a way that you can go ahead and collect programmatic data for the purposes of the reporting tool. It has formulas and pivot tables to be able to summarize and aggregate data for you to submit. We do ask that you do not submit the Excel file. We ask that you do not submit the Excel file because that has personally identifiable data for the young people in your program. And we are not looking for that data. It should not be submitting any personally identifiable data. We're not looking for demographic data as individuals, we're looking at it as aggregate. So that is the data tracker tool. It is an optional tool. Many organizations have other ways of collecting data, intake surveys, forms, various sort of ways to go ahead and be able to collect data. It is not required, but we provide it as a resource to our funded partners to be able, because it was a request actually. So it is an optional tracker tool. So that is not submitted. We have never requested that to be submitted, and we do not ever look for that to be submitted. There is also a Word document of the template of the progress report. And as Noemi mentioned, after this session, either later this week or early next week, we're going to go ahead and provide the updated template again, as well as the Alchemer link. We do encourage you to use the new template. Again, the new template is to be able to collaborate. You can share it on Office 365. You can send it over email, get your supervisor's approval in advance. I can tell you, folks probably prefer to review things in a Word document than it on an online platform and having to click a link, enter in a password, all of that. There might be some issues there. So it just is easier to be able to provide and edit outside of that. So as you're collaborating with your team on submitting your report, we highly, highly encourage, given the length of the progress report, to complete it on a Word document prior to submission. And then when you're ready to submit, you've gotten all your approvals, things look great, you've collaborated with all the folks on your team to be able to aggregate the data and put it into the template, then you can move it over to the Alchemer platform. And that ensures that most of your data is valid. So many of you have received in the past emails from the EYC team asking for you to update certain numbers because the demographic data doesn't encompass all of the young people that you've reported as new or completed. And so we need to be able to make sure that that data is validated. So this allows us to have reduced back and forth in terms of validating the data. It allows you to have a cleaner copy at the end of the report, as Brianna covered, being able to download that PDF. And so the Alchemer submission, so once you hit submit on Alchemer, that is your submission for your progress report at this time. In the future, if anything changes, we will let you know. But at this point, when you get to the screen and it says, thank you for your submission, we'll update some of the language to acknowledge, the thank you note there. But once you get to that, that is confirming that you have in fact submitted. If you have any questions about submissions, you didn't get to the thank you page, feel free to email us. We'll be on for office hours as well. I want to now be able to walk through some of the questions that have been asked. There's a handful of questions that were asked about new youth and successfully completed youth. So with this question, we have provided some guidance in the reporting template as well. We are going to also send in this email that we send out later this week or early next week, an FAQ/guidance document for the evaluation. We pull out some of the definitions. It's organized section by section. So that way you can refer to it for the questions that you're asking or that you have for each of the relative sections. In terms of new youth, if you are an existing Elevate Youth California partner from prior to November of last year, so if your award is not new, if you're not a part of round 5, any young people who have previously participated in your program that you have included demographic data for, you would not note them as new. The way you want to look at the demographic data is unique youth. So if you counted a young person in demographic data before, you've marked them as new, they would not be marked as new in any future reporting on this current award. So again, if you have any young people, they might have completed, let's say you had a summer leadership development program. They completed that program, you want to mark them as completed. They are not marked as successfully completed until they have successfully completed all aspects of your EYC funding program. They're not going to engage in any future programming that your EYC award funds. And so it is really important to be able to make sure that you're not duplicating the young people. So if a young person, again, is marked as new once or completed, it should be only one time over the course of the of your award, not your reporting period, over the course of your award. There's a question in the chat that says, what if you mark them as new partners last period, but you didn't start meeting with youth until this reporting period? So this is, I'll adjust the language. So if you mark them as new youth participants, the key piece here is that you want to go ahead, and if you've noted them on the demographic data as new, they would not be, you would not be able to adjust it. You would not include them as new again. So we are asking that you mark young people as new in the reporting period that they are active. So you should not technically mark a young person in your program. So let's say if you happen to meet a young person at an outreach event on May 10th. On May 10th, you met a young person at an outreach event and they expressed interest in your program. You're going to kick off your summer programming in the summer in June, and they're really interested and eager to join, and you know they're going to commit. We ask that you do not mark them as new until they have participated in a core programming event or activity. So they would not be new in the current reporting period, but they would be marked as new in the next reporting period. So just a little bit of clarity on that end. It's a little bit of a complicated question there. I am going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit to some of the other questions that have been asked. And we're going to try, Brianna might need you to share your screen again. I've mentioned that we're going to share the link to Alchemer next week. It does save. There is a save and return feature that Brianna has covered. There's another question about new youth and successfully completed youth. I would really encourage you to look at the guidance on that. Come to the office hour questions with your specific office hours with your specific questions if it's not clarified. But youth are really considered to be completed as they've completed any of your programming. So again, once you mark them as new, they should not be marked as new over the entire course of your award. If you mark them as successfully completed, they should not be marked as new when they engage in another activity. The reporting period and requirements template, we're actually going to go ahead and send that in the next email that goes out to you over, just so that way you have it for all the upcoming timelines and requirements that are due for both progress reports and financial reports. Nomi answered a question in the chat about receives referral linkage, and this is about to provide additional services. This is under the funded or the partnerships question. We have a list, so we've revamped the partnerships, and Brianna, if you're able to share your screen on that, that'd be great. So again, as Brianna covered, we have revamped the partnerships section to look a little bit different. You now write the name of the partner, and then you go ahead and say the role that they had, as well as Brianna will show us what exactly it is, because I'm totally blanking out at this point. But there are some questions there, and you would answer them for each of those partners. Just bear with us as we're going to go back. And I think because, Brianna, you probably submitted it, it may not let you go back. Sorry about that. But again, if there are definitions for that, if you have any questions about how to classify those partners or partnerships, we do ask that you just go ahead and ask on the office hours specific questions. That's a great point to actually have individual questions be answered. More specific questions, we can get some more information as well. There's another question about, could we count interested youth in singular programming? This is a really great question. So we really invite you to look at your EYC program. Okay, so before we go there, partnerships. So this is the way that you would highlight a partner. You'd list their name, you pick the sector or type they're a part of, and then if we scroll down, there's an option to go ahead and pick their project role. If if you're like I think this has already been a question that's been asked, partners are like, our funded partners have asked, well, we have a partner who works on both evaluation and they're an advisor or thought partner. We ask that you select the category that best fits. So you are only able to select one. This allows us to understand how this partner is supporting your Elevate Youth California program. I want to kind of take a step back and just as a reminder that the report that you're submitting is related to activities and programming related to only your Elevate Youth California award. So, we have to think about this as the universe of programming that your organization is offering for your Elevate Youth California award. Typically, this is if you are expending any funds, that's how many organizations, or if there's programming that is classified under your EYC program. And so if this partner is supporting aspects of your Elevate Youth California program, they would be noted. Partnerships are not required. However, this allows us to be able to understand the ways in which our funded partners connect with diverse sectors, with folks to be able to advance prevention and commitments to young people. So this is why we collect that question. And again, we're really looking for you to take a moment to be mindful of those true partnerships for your EYC funded program. If we go to, so with that, then we'll go to the next part is about the demographic data. So as we go into, thanks, Brianna, as we go into demographic data and the questions about young people, there's the first question about what do you identify as core programming? So as you think about your young people that you're engaging, you're really looking at it under two buckets. What is your core programming? And we're just having some bear with us as we get to the next screen. What is your core programming? And this is the definition for core programming. So, we think about core programming as in receiving young people who receive multiple continuous services, support, or contact. So we are really prioritizing civic engagement, mentorship, peer-to-peer support, and leadership. So these are the three implementation strategies for the Elevate Youth California program. And so when you think about your core programming, we want you to list demographic data for those young people who are a part of your core programming. So the questions for demographics, including the number of new youth, all of these, again, are part of your core programming. So if you have a leadership development program, if you have a mentorship program, if you have healing-centered or youth-led support programs that are a part of your Elevate Youth California award, these would all be considered as core programming as long as they're not a single standalone activity. So if I hosted, a series of mentorship engagement activities, looked very different, but they were going to be continuous, it would be classified as core programming. If I held, if your organization is hosting a back to school night, it's a one-time, we want to go ahead and celebrate the kickoff of the school year, that would not be considered core programming. Young people who are part of your core programming, their families might be at that event, but that is not a core programming event. It is a singular programming or limited contact activity. So this is how we would identify core programming, and all of the demographic data for the young people that is included on this should be a part of your core programming. It is really important to understand that. And so then we have the singular programming. And so singular programming data looks different. For singular programming, you have a back to school night. You have a large community picnic at the end of the year. You want to celebrate graduates who are part of your program and they're going to go up, they've graduated high school, they've graduated college, or they've had some great milestone achievements in your program and you have a programmatic graduation. That might be more of a singular programming. And so, depending on what it looks like. So again, we ask that you look at the definitions and determine when you have a back to school night, when you have a large community event, when you have let's say you're hosting a large prevention event, we do not expect for demographic data to be collected on all of the people who are attending that event. So that would be classified as a singular programming or a limited context. So it's really important to think about as you build out as you think about the reporting tool, to think about it as core programming and singular programming. I know I've kind of like harped on that a little bit, but it is, based off of the questions, it is really important to be able to just read through the entire template, be able to think about the questions that you have, and then also attend our office hours if you have any specific questions. And I said this a few times because there's been a handful of questions throughout the report. And so once you've again listed a young person on here, you as demographic data, you would not, if you need to go ahead and update their data, go ahead and reach out to us at elevateyouthca at shfcenter.org. So let's say if you started, your core programming, a young person joined, but you just didn't get around to collecting their demographic data. You want to list them that they were new in the program. You listed unknown as all of their demographic data, but in a few weeks you collect their data, but you've already submitted the report. We ask that you just reach out to us and we'll go ahead and provide the instructions to update that data. I know I want to be mindful of time as well. There were a few other questions that were related to character minimums, and I know Brianna answered this, but we really encourage you to be thorough in your responses. It's important to be able to share information as succinctly as possible. So we're not looking for very detailed responses that go into the weeds around some of the specific challenges or who it was with or any of that, but really high level, anything that you feel that you can that we could be able to provide support with. So that is important to be able to know. There's a question about, again, like your school year might finish, you might have a leadership development program, you might have a peer-led support aspect of your program. Maybe you have a leadership development program over the summer, and then in the fall semester, you're going to have another core programming activity that starts and a series that starts. While young people may have completed one of those, they would not have completed until they're fully outside, they're not engaging in any of your Elevate Youth California programs. So I'm just going through, I'm trying to make sure that I get to most, if not all of the main questions. And if you haven't, feel free to drop them in the chat. We mentioned about, oh, go ahead.
Oh, there is a question that maybe we can answer, that you could answer. It says, we will be slowly incorporating the Elevate funds. The core program has been operating and funded by other grants means, and we will be invoicing for some costs for the reporting period. Do we want full reporting for this period?
Great question. And so I would really invite you to come to the office hours and be able to share this, share a bit more detail about this. So it's really up to your organization on how you classify activities of being a part of different programming. So, many organizations, or some organizations, I shouldn't say many, but many of the organizations who have reached out to us, they'll share that, they haven't utilized their EYC funds, maybe because of the delays with the contract, the announcement. I know that's happening for a lot of our round 5 partners. You had programming that you would like to be in the future considered for Elevate Youth California, but you have not used those funds for. It's important to be able to go ahead and distinguish internally how you are going to classify those events, whether you want to go ahead and say that these activities and events did utilize EYC funding. So we're going to go ahead and count these towards the progress report. If you feel that that's the best way to take that approach, that's great. Some organizations have multiple streams of funding that support a broader program. So you might have a summer, I'm going to go back to my example of this summer leadership development, series, and you have that going on in the summer, but you're utilizing your Elevate Youth California funding. You got some funding from another funder, and maybe there were some donations that were also given to your organization to support this. It really depends on how your organization is being able to count what is specific to your EYC program. There's another question that says, if a specific program is a combination of peer-led mentorship and civic engagement activities, will duplicative responses to questions 16 to 25 be sufficient? This is a great question. we are asking for activities to not be duplicative across the sections. So we ask that you go ahead and select a part of those core programming activities. You go ahead and select which areas that relates to the best. In your description, you can also mention that, you know, we have the summer series that I'm going to go with again, because that's what I'm going back to. And so you have the summer series, and let's say that it's the leadership development component. So you're doing some work around advocacy and civic engagement. You've got a mentorship program where throughout you've got different folks from different careers who are coming in and talking to young people. And then you've got some activities in that series that are related to peer-led stuff. So you've got some opportunities that you've got for young people who were part of the program last year, and they're going to be able to lead some of the sessions with you. Now it is up to your organization to determine how you are classifying those events. We are not looking for the core programming information to be duplicative. So each activity or program or event can only be counted once in that section. So if you had the series of 10 events, let's say over the summer, and you know, you were like, well, 3 of these events were really great, gauged around mentorship. You would list those for mentorship. 3 of them were around peer-led supports, peer-led activities. That would be counted under that section. And then 4 activities were really focused on the civic engagement, leadership development aspect. And so that's how you would count them. So again, we are not asking for that to be duplicative. So if you had an event that touched on all 3 of the implementation strategies, you would not note them in each of those individual sections. You would only note them in one that best applies. So again, throughout the report, many of the times you're going to have to use your best judgment on which category it applies to, because we do not want it to be duplicative. There's a question about, can we count youth interested in singular programming? Interested in singular programming, so really thinking about it as you're looking at your events. So, you know, first I shared that you have your core programming, you've got your singular programming, and then you got to think about the events that actually took place. So young people might be interested in activities, but if they did not attend or participate in those activities, they would not be counted. So it is important to, you know, the interest is great. I'm really glad that, you know, young people are interested in the programming, they're wanting to attend, you know, but we're really looking at the information on who did attend. So again, you would have those categories, and within those categories, you would go ahead and specify sort of how many on the singular programming activities happened, and you would do a cumulative. So let's say over the summer you did, you know, let's say you did 3 singular programming activities and you had 50 people come to each of those activities. In the singular programming, you would have duplicative numbers, because what we're not asking you to do is say, at event 1, 50 people came. At event 2, how many of those 50 people came again? That would be too much work. So you would, in the singular programming, it would be duplicative. So I wanted to also highlight that. You would just total 50, 50, 50 that came, whether it's the same 50 people or different 50, it's okay. It would be duplicative to just show the sort of reach that each of your activities are having. Another question, so if a youth has participated in the past and had not participated again until recently, that would not be new youth. Yes, that is correct. And if the youth does successfully finish, they can never participate in events related to Elevate Youth again and be counted as new. I would reframe it as your organization should not mark them as completed unless they are not coming back to events or programming, or they've successfully completed. So I would reframe it. I don't want to say that the young person can't come back to programming, just that your organization would only note them as completed, as successfully completed, if they are no longer participating because, you know, they finished that summer series that you had for leadership development, and then they went off to college. Let's say they completed the entire series, they came out of 9 out of 10 of those events, they've been engaged in the past, they go off to college. This is actually a very common, we've actually had this question asked a few times. Well, the young person came back, you know, they participated next year in the summer. So again, it's really important for you to determine whether or not that the young person has completed. So if you've included their demographic data, you know, again, we just ask that you do not include it in the future. And if you have an incident where that's happened, we ask that you just go ahead and email us or ask us on the office hours, and we'll walk through how that process works. But that is correct that you would not count young people multiple times in the demographic data. Otherwise, we have duplicative data, and it's no longer just unique youth that the program is reaching, and we want to make sure that we're not over-reporting on that data. There's for core programming such as biweekly meetings, do we count each biweekly meeting, or is that considered duplicative? This is a really great question. So if you have multiple events or activities that are part of it, let's say a part of your core programming, you would list on the data on the reporting template each of the activities that did take place. So again, within that, you would classify how many activities. So let's say you have these biweekly meetings. They happen for over the course of 4 weeks, and we're using biweekly meetings as simplified, but let's say they covered different topics. They had themes for each of them. So you had 8 of them. You had 10 young people who came to those activities. So in the data tracker tool, let's say if this was considered a peer-led support, you had 8 activities, and you had 10 young people who came to those events. You would note that you had 8 what did I say? This is peer-led support. Let's say that it's peer-led support. So you would note that for your peer-led support that you had 8 activities and 10 young people who came across. We're not looking in core programming for it to be duplicative. So we are asking that you share overarchingly across the reporting period how many young people attended those, how many unique young people attended those events. So that is one of the other distinctions between the core programming and the singular programming. When you have core programming, and that's where the data tracker tool really comes in handy, because you have at each of the events, the young people, you're able to sort of check which events they went to. And then as you total them, you're able to see the unique number of young people that have attended those events. So that is a key distinction on the core programming data. There's another question around if youth leaves the program willingly, then are they completed? This is a great question, and we really ask you to define how successful completion is. So let's say if a young person participated in, you have a summer series, they only came to 2 sessions, we wouldn't ask that you marked them as successfully completed, because we don't think, to me at this point, if I were going ahead and reporting on that, if a young person participated in 2, let's say that they just no longer were interested in the events, they maybe had a rift with another person in the program, or they moved, or they just didn't want to come because maybe they got a job and they no longer could have participated. That would be a question back to your organization on what are you classifying as successfully completed. And we're really looking at successful completion to be able to see and determine the young people who are making their way through a key amount, or a significant amount of the programming that you're hosting or that series that you had. So if a young person attended, they happen to stop engaging after 8 or 9 sessions, that might be something that's marked as successful completion. So we do again ask that you use your best judgment for that. And if you have any specific questions, we're happy to answer them. Okay. There's another question that's more nuanced. I'm going to try to get to this too, is we had financial literacy mentors share knowledge. Should we list the organization or the 4 individuals of that org that gave presentations? This is a great question. Partnership data, so data on partners should be at the sort of highest sort of level. So if you worked with an organization and they had 4 staff members, you would mark the organization that came out. Now, let's say if there was 4 community members that you connected with, and they were going to go ahead and do this financial literacy support, now you would sort of determine, are they considered mentors for your core programming, or are they partners? And so, and I would say that if it's going to be a one-time event or a short series of 2 events or something, maybe that's where they're coming in as partners. But if it's continuous engagement, let's say if you kicked off you had a whole series, it was going to cover 6 months or 9 months or even a year, and they were going to come back and periodically go ahead and there was a relationship building aspect between the young people and the mentors that were there. That would be likely considered as a mentorship component. But when you're looking at partnerships, it is at the highest level that you're looking at. So if you can engage in a school and you have teachers or administrators that are supporting your program, you would not mark them as teachers, individual teachers, but really at the school or school district level that you work with. The examples are getting more questions. So mentors and partners should also not be duplicative. This is a great question, and it really depends. So the partnership, you coordinate, you're connecting with another organization. They're serving as a referral linkage, and they're also, some of their staff are also part of your mentorship component, or they're a part of, the mentorship component is really where adults come in. They would be, you could count them as both. So partnerships and mentors are not unique, they can overlap, but again, making sure that, and mentors would be the only time where on the core programming that adults, anyone outside of the ages of 12 to 26 would be incorporated. Great question. So let's say I worked with a university in one department and this reporting, it's a different department. Is that a new partner for us to decide? I would say it's up to you to decide. If you connected with the department and you were doing something around advocacy, civic engagement, so you got connected to, let's say, I'm gonna just go with political science department, and you connected with them 6 months ago. But now you were really looking at building more of a cultural sort of program, and you wanted to go ahead and connect with the history department or the legal department, or the history department. That would be a new partner, given that it is a separate sort of partnership that you have, and you can list those as different partners. A little bit of nuance, and again, we can provide a little bit of clarity. So I know we're at time. We're going to go ahead and sort of pause here. We'll continue again, as we mentioned, to be able, we'll have office hours that we're going to have. And if we can just show back the last slide as just a friendly reminder. So the team will go ahead and send out, I can't remember if the links to the sessions, office hour sessions have been dropped. In the chat, you'll go ahead and receive an email after this. And if you're not receiving email communications, please email us. The email address for our team has been dropped in the chat, and we'll go ahead and get to your questions as well over email. And we encourage you to come to office hours, and we'll answer the final few questions over just the Q&A box. Thank you all and appreciate it. And thank you again, Brianna, for leading the Alchemer overview portion.